In Pakistan, a lot has been said and written about Mohammed Ali Jinnah, mostly in appreciation, as you would expect, and hardly anything critical, because, as you know, he was pretty much the reason the nation came into existence. He was, after all, the founder of Pakistan, so there is a great respect and admiration for the man. But as it happens with anybody, if you were to assess anybody's personality, or especially if they are in a public sphere, you will inevitably encounter certain difficult questions, certain uncomfortable ones. And that has been the case with Jinnah as well. And that's something Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed tries to do in his latest book. It's called Jinnah. And he very critically examines all the aspects of Jinnah's life throughout his political career as well as his personal life. There have been certain controversies around the book, and I would say whenever there is a controversy, the best way to judge that book is to read it yourself. And if you ask me, most of the arguments that Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed makes in this book are pretty much based on his sources, his quoting directly from Jinnah's speeches, or some other references, certain books also. He talks about all the popular books that have been written on the subject. So there is a fair bit of research and scholarship involved in that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a few passages from the book, right from the beginning, just about the beginning, I would say. And you will get some idea how he's trying to frame his argument and how he's trying to assess Jinnah's role in Pakistan's history. So let's start. The establishment of Pakistan in mid-August 1947 is proverbially attributed to the sterling leadership of Mohammed Ali Jinnah. The British writer Beverly Nichols, who met Jinnah in 1943, described him as the most important man in Asia. The chapter on Jinnah was titled Dialogue with the Giant. The Pakistan government's officially appointed biographer for Jinnah, Hector Bolitho, noted in his introductory chapter that Pakistan and India were irrevocably divided, largely through Mohammed Ali Jinnah's imagination and persistence. Jinnah's other famous biographer, Stanley Wolpert, paid him the ultimate tribute in the following words: "Few individuals significantly alter the course of history. Fewer still modify the map of the world. Hardly anyone can be credited with the creating a nation state. Mohammed Ali Jinnah did all three." In the Pakistani national narrative, homage paid to him is understandably hagiographical. Founders of religion and founders of a state always enjoy sui generis status among their devotees. One can therefore quote many other lavish remarks extolling Jinnah's extraordinary achievements, but he has his detractors as well, who accuse him of being the villain of the piece who bears most responsibility for the bloody partition of India, which claimed more than 1 million Hindu, Muslim and Sikh lives. Jinnah had to surmount stiff opposition from the Indian National Congress, INC, which was then the biggest political party of India, a grassroots mass organization since the 1920s, with branches all over undivided India and long years of political organization and activity. It demanded freedom from British rule in the name of all Indians in a united India. In opposition to it, the All India Muslim League, AIML, demanded separate states for the Muslims in the northwestern and northeastern zones of India, where they constituted a majority, on the grounds that they were a distinct and separate nation and not merely a minority. It was an elitist party till 1940, which thereafter rapidly acquired popular support and became a mass party by the time the future of India was put to vote in 1945-46. Although Jinnah won the case for Pakistan, the partition of India and the two Muslim majority provinces of Bengal and the Punjab resulted in unprecedented violence and rioting, in which more than 1 million Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs died, and the biggest migration in history, mostly to escape death and injury, took place. Some 12 to 15 million crossed the international border drawn between India and Pakistan. In the Pakistani nationalist narrative, Jinnah is eulogized as the man of destiny, fired by a true love for Islam. And Muslims, of course, who liberated Muslims from the yoke of Hindu imperialism superheaded by the Indian National Congress. Jinnah's two-nation theory, which sharply and irreconcilably dichotomized Hindus and Muslims as two separate nations, is disseminated in Pakistan through the educational curriculum. Farooq Ahmed Dar, in his book Jinnah's Pakistan, mentions several occasions when, after the Muslim League moved the Lahore Resolution on 23rd March 1940, demanding the creation of separate Muslim states, the Indian National Congress tried to dissuade Jinnah from demanding Pakistan. The first instance was in June 1940, when the Congress President Subhash Chandra Bose offered Jinnah the post of the first Prime Minister of independent India, but contingent on his withdrawing his demand for the division of India. Second, a few months later, C. Rajagopalachari went even further. He offered the Muslim League not only the right to nominate the Prime Minister, but also the cabinet of their choice. 3. As late as April 1947, Gandhi was ready to hand over power to Jinnah at the centre with an all-Muslim administration if he gave up his demand of partition. Dar then presents Jinnah's steadfast resistance to such overtures in the following words. These temptations could not, however, mould the solid man in Jinnah, and he stood firm on his stance, which he thought was in the best interests of the Muslims of South Asia. Even when such efforts failed to persuade Jinnah, the Congress leaders continued their efforts to impede the creation of Pakistan till the last day. Yet they failed to do so. Dar and others, however, shy away from explaining why Jinnah accepted the 16 May 1946 Cabinet Mission Plan proffered by British ministers to break the deadlock between the Congress and the Muslim League. The Cabinet Mission Plan rejected the Pakistan demand. It recommended instead a loose Indian Union with a weak centre whose constituent federating units were entitled to reconsider their relationship with the Union after 10-year intervals. Additionally, the princely states were required only to cede defence and foreign affairs to the Union while retaining control over all other sectors of society, something which was already the praxis under British paramountcy. The Congress leaders found the Cabinet Mission Plan unacceptable and rejected it. In sharp contrast to Jinnah being identified as a pivotal to the partition of India and the creation of Pakistan, Aisha Jalal, in The Spokesman, the Jinnah, the Muslim League, and the demand for Pakistan, originally her PhD dissertation, came to the novel conclusion that Jinnah sought to be recognized as the sole spokesman of Indian Muslims on the all India level. From the late 1930s, his main concern was the arrangements by which power at the centre was to be shared once the British quit India. At another place, she wrote, "It was Congress which insisted on partition. It was Jinnah who was against partition." In an article Between Myth and History, published in The Dawn on 23rd March 2005, she complained that she has been misunderstood as having suggested that Jinnah used the Pakistan demand merely as a pressure tactic. In it, she asserts that in her books, The Sole Spokesman, Jinnah, the Muslim League and the Demand for Pakistan, and Self and Sovereignty, Individual and Community in South Asian Islam since 1850, she had delineated an uneasy fit between the claim of Muslim nationhood and the uncertainties and indeterminacies of politics in the late colonial era that led to the attainment of sovereign statehood. Jalal refers to the 1940 Lahore Resolution, which she argues avoided any mention of partition or Pakistan while calling for the grouping of the Muslim majority provinces in northwestern and northeastern India into independent states, in which the constituent units would be autonomous and sovereign. Does avoiding any mention of partition or Pakistan while calling for independent states in which the constituent units would be autonomous and sovereign warrant that it did not mean demanding partition and Pakistan? In the conclusion, she underscores it was Congress's unwillingness to countenance an equitable power-sharing arrangement with the Muslim League, which resulted in the creation of sovereign Pakistan based on the partition of Punjab and Bengal along ostensibly religious lines. Regarding the contents and empirical material in The Sole Spokesman, it is to be underlined that it includes accounts of many events and episodes demonstrating Jinnah's efforts to surmount challenges to his leadership, from powerful regional leaders to be the sole spokesman of Muslims. It also abundantly demonstrates Jinnah's strategy to work hand in glove with the British to mount a challenge to the Congress claim to represent all Indians. Was it, as she argues, to work out a power-sharing deal with the Indian National Congress and the British? If yes, then that is not evident from the hundreds of speeches, statements and messages in which Jinnah explained repeatedly that he wanted a partition of India to create Muslim states. I give here in the beginning only one example. Lahore session of the AIML ended on 25 March 1940. The same day, Jinnah gave a press conference in which he said, "The declaration of our goal, which we have definitely laid down, of the division of India, is in my opinion a landmark in the future history of the Muslimans of India. I thoroughly believe that the idea of one united India is a dream. Given goodwill and a friendly understanding, Muslim India and Hindu India can live as most friendly neighbors, free from clashes and friction to their respective spheres, and peacefully develop the government of their states to their own satisfaction respectively." Jinnah also dismissed repeatedly as nonsense that he was using the demand for Pakistan as a bargaining chip. Again, at this preliminary stage, I give one example. Speaking to the Delhi Muslim Students Federation on 23rd November 1940, Jinnah angrily dismissed any suggestion that he or the League were using the demand for Pakistan as a bargaining tactic. He remarked, "The Hindus must give up their dream of a Hindu Raj and agree to divide India into Hindu homeland and Muslim homeland. Today we are prepared to take only 1/4 of India and leave 3/4 to them. Pakistan was our goal today, for which the Muslims of India will live and, if necessary, die for. It is not a counter for bargaining." These are only two examples of hundreds of others, as we will learn. In the bibliography of The Sole Spokesman, Jalal has included M. Rafiq Afzal's collection of Jinnah's speeches and statements during 1911 to 34 and from 47 to 48, but references to or the direct citing of the hundreds of speeches, statements and messages that Jinnah made during the crucial period of 1940 to 46, when he campaigned relentlessly for the partition to create Pakistan, are absent. Jinnah, of course, never wrote a book, not even a pamphlet or extended article. However, his speeches, statements, and messages on the two-nation theory and demand for Pakistan are available and easily accessible. We shall examine Jinnah's speeches, statements, and messages in a systematic, chronological manner to ascertain his position on power sharing, partition, and Pakistan. It is interesting to note that a journalistic version blaming the Congress for the partition was propounded in the late 1960s and popularized in the 1970s by Pakistani Maoists. The background is a curious mix of revisionist thinking and theorizing on the part of Pakistani communists and their relationship with the Pakistani state. Ironically, the Communist Party of India had taken the stand in 1942 that wherever economically backward and underdeveloped nationalities were in majority, they could exercise their right of self-determination to establish separate states. Muslims, Sikhs, and other groups were described as nationalities. The Muslim nationality, which was in a majority in the northwestern and northeastern zones of India, was entitled to the right of self-determination and therefore Pakistan. Yet, that Muslims were a nationality contradicted the huge corpus of writings of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Joseph Stalin, and even Leon Trotsky on the national question, because all of them rejected religion but emphasized language and shared homeland as the basis of nationality and nationalism. In any event, after Pakistan came into being, the Pakistani communists from the very onset were treated as a pariah group. Jinnah was on the record warning the communists not to join the Muslim League with a view to subvert its Islamic ideology. And after Pakistan came into being, he and other Muslim League leaders were determined to ally Pakistan with the West, especially the United States. They projected Pakistan as an ideological Muslim state committed to acting as the frontline state to prevent the spread of Soviet communism. In 1951, some ultra-nationalist military officers and top leaders of the Communist Party of Pakistan were arrested on charges of plotting to overthrow the Pakistan government. Evidence shows that a meeting did take place between the military officers and some communists, but the latter had withdrawn. The conspiracy was foiled. The alleged plotters were arrested, tried, and punished with imprisonment and fines. In 1954, the Communist Party of Pakistan was banned on the grounds that it was a fifth column involved in a sinister conspiracy to break up Pakistan. However, in the early 1960s, relations between the USSR and China turned unfriendly, even hostile, resulting in a split in the international communist movement. In Pakistan, the communists polarized into Moscow and pro-Beijing parties and factions. In 1962, the Sino-India border war took place, and China and India became enemies. Since the Nehru government had good relations with the Soviet Union, the balance of power logic drew Pakistan and China towards one another. Pakistani Foreign Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto played the key role in orientating Pakistan towards China. In 1967, Bhutto founded the Pakistan People's Party, which after the breakup of Pakistan in 1971 came to power, limited to the western wing of the country. For the first time, Pakistan had a government in power which was friendly with the communist regime and sought its support to assert itself vis-a-vis India. Bhutto flirted with Islamic socialism while Maoist literature was allowed to be freely distributed in Pakistan. It provided pro-Beijing communists the breathing space and freedom to start propagating the idea of a peasant revolution. Simultaneously, they sought acceptance and respectability from the Pakistani establishment by joining the anti-India refrain. While the Soviet Union was denounced as revisionist and social imperialist, China was proclaimed as the center of world revolution with Mao Zedong's thought as the Bible of peasant revolution. Some pro-Beijing leftists decided to work from within the PPP, while others founded Maoist parties and organizations. Such political and ideological posturing was not enough to establish a distinct profile. A Marxist argument was needed to undergird and legitimize the partition of India as the outcome of class antagonisms between those supporting the Indian National Congress and those supporting the Muslim League. It was argued that the Congress party represented big monopoly capitalism or big bourgeoisie, while the Muslim League was the party of the rising Muslim bourgeoisie unwilling to submit to the domination of the big bourgeoisie and hence of the Congress party. The big bourgeoisie therefore made the Congress party go for partition rather than allow autonomy for the rising Muslim bourgeoisie to grow in a loose Indian federation. Proceeding along such lines, the Congress as the political front of the non-Muslim monopoly capitalists is held to be responsible for the partition of India. Such arguments and theses with some variation were advanced by journalists, columnists and Maoist leaders. They were not trained researchers or scholars. Since they were setting forth a political stand, they unsurprisingly took liberties with facts and highlighted those that suited their purpose. Among them, Zahid Chaudhry devoted a great deal of his time and effort advancing such a thesis, citing and quoting source material selectively. Now, the general approach of historians and biographers of Jinnah has been to formulate their thesis in terms of Jinnah versus Gandhi and Nehru, with the British as arbiters in the middle, allegedly favoring either Jinnah or Gandhi and Nehru. A dissenting point of view was expressed by Wali Khan in his Facts Are Facts, in which he alleged that the British used Jinnah to defeat the freedom movement led by the Congress. However, the book lacks references and some of the claims are questionable. Jinnah is also criticized from an Islamic point of view by some Pakistani Muslims. Nur Muhammad Qureshi's book Tu Sahib Manzil Hai Ya Bhatakta Hua Musafir attacks Jinnah for adopting policies inimical to the unity of Indian Muslims. The partition of India is deplored as the partition of Muslims and Jinnah is blamed for it. Yuvraj Krishan's Partition and Pakistan, Jinnah, the founder, British architects, highlights the cooperation between Jinnah and the British from the time of the Cripps mission of 1942. When I met the author in 2014, I pointed out to him that the British had indeed been considering partition since Cripps, but the decision to partition India did not date from the memorandum of 11 May 1946 of General Cloud, as Krishan suggests. On the contrary, the general had concluded that Pakistan should not be created because it would entail the splitting of the Indian army and thus render South Asia vulnerable to a Soviet invasion. I shall be demonstrating later in the book that from the literature available in the public sphere, it seems that after considerable prevarication, the British military changed its policy conclusively in favor of partition only as late as spring 1947. A host of other writers have in recent years shed light on British moves which set in motion processes which led to partition. One of the core arguments of my book is that since Pakistan was claimed in the name of Muslims as a separate nation, the relationship between Islam and the state was inextricably linked and became an organic part of the ideological foundation of Pakistan. Pakistan could be either a modern type of a Muslim nation state or a fundamentalist Islamic state, both positions privileging Muslims as the primary nation, but not a secular democratic state. The ideological thrust of the two-nation theory and its popular form of Muslim nationalism was the antithesis of secularism. This will be demonstrated at length during the course of the book.